with Will on 531 PI.
It is 12 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good to have your company here at Pacific Mornings on 531 PI. Time now to get a pulse check on what's going on in politics. Joining us is Labour's Deputy Leader Carmel Sepuloni, fresh from her trip back with Winston Peters across the Pacific. Keen to chat about that first. Welcome back. How was it?
Yeah, it was great. It was worthwhile. We got to do that really important thing of strengthening the relationships with Pacific leaders across the Pacific. And so, yeah, I was grateful to have the opportunity to be part of it.
Yeah, it was a massive delegation, like from all parties, I'm assuming, right? Except for Te Pāti Māori?
Yeah, and the invitation was extended to them as well. I'm not sure why or they weren't able to attend, but the invitation was extended to them. One thing with Winston, and we may not agree with him on everything or lots of things, but one thing he is very good at is the genuine attempt to ensure that Pacific regional matters are done in a bipartisan way. And he also understands the need to have kind of seamless transitions between governments and to retain that consistency of relationship with the Pacific.
But given it was such a big cohort of politicians heading over, give me a bit of a sense do you guys interact much together? Is it as cutthroat as it seems in the House, or do you guys actually get along?
This is probably another element to it that's quite healthy. You do have the opportunity to get to know members of parliament from other parties. And when you represent in these kinds of trips, you're representing as like New Zealand Inc. You're not going there as separate political parties. And I think that, that is a very positive thing. I mean, some of those MPs I've never had anything to do with. Andy Foster, Tim van der Molen, Nicole, I've been on one of these trips with her before. But, this is an opportunity to actually get to know the person and to connect on a New Zealand Inc. front rather that combative political party against political party space.
It's funny you mentioned Tim and Andy. I almost forgot they existed in Parliament, but I digress. So with that in mind, how do you bridge that gap between political ideologies and just, moving past that? I mean, I just want to get more of a sense of that because, some people would ask.
Yeah. So on these trips, as I said, I think it's important to note that mostly the approach towards the Pacific region is done in a seamless bipartisan way. Mostly we agree on how important the region is and how we should connect and relate to the Pacific regional leaders and to other countries. And so there's less areas that are contentious. So we're not going to sit down and be having big debates on them. I mean, I don't agree with Nicole from the ACT Party on her stance on gun laws in New Zealand, but that's not something that we were discussing on this trip, and we didn't need to get into a debate on it.
Yeah, fair enough. Speaking of differences, though, now, I want to talk about New Zealand first. I think there are bigger things to worry about instead of this bill that's been put forward on, biology and all that matter. What do you make of the bill?
Well, I agree as well. I don't think that anyone's done any focus grouping where this has come up as the number one priority for New Zealanders. We know what the priorities are. They are jobs, health, homes, cost of living, safety. Certainly not whether someone is biologically a woman and which toilets transgender are using. And so I don't understand why New Zealand First have decided to go down this wormhole, but they are far down it now, and we're all seeing it.
Yeah, look, there's this fixation of culture bills when it comes to this coalition at the moment. It feels like we only really just got rid of the Treaty Principles Bill. Now comes another problem. Do you think it's just whipping up all this? Well,
I think, you've got to look at the history of New Zealand First, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. When they started out, they were there for Māori. Hard to believe now, but that's who they represented, and they represented strongly. Then they moved away, and they moved towards senior citizens and representing the regions. Perhaps that's not working for them to the extent that they need it to, and so they've gone towards this other cohort of New Zealanders. It is the New Zealanders that were anti-vax It is the New Zealanders that are anti-trans, New Zealanders that are anti-fluoride. You know, we probably at some point will throw in 1080 in there. And so, you know, they're going for a particular cohort of voters in New Zealand. Perhaps they're worried. You know, they always lose support when they're in government, and so they need to find a new group of voters, and that's what it seems to be.
Yeah, and look, let's turn our attention now to Winston Peters and the way he was behaving on RNZ this week in terms of, and now he's come out perhaps questioning the funding of RNZ and whether it should be defunded. The problem I come back to here is that journalists are just doing their jobs at the end of the day. What do you think?
Absolutely. And, you know, as an opposition member of parliament and a Labour MP, I could never say hand on heart that I've been given an easy ride by a journalist like Corin Dan. You know, he is equally as critical and robust in his interviewing of us as Labour MPs as he would be of New Zealand First Act or National. And so, you know, I think that it was really offensive for that particular journalist, but for journalism in general to be accused of this level of bias. And, you know, you cannot threaten to take the funding away from a trusted source of media, which Radio New Zealand is, without people questioning whether or not you're trying to censor the media, which effectively is what it feels like.
Yeah, and you're hearing that. I don't actually hear it from the opposition much at all, maybe perhaps Te Pāti Māori at most, but in the sense of you hear politicians, particularly on the right, say the mainstream media and all that jazz. Do you think that is causing more harm than good? It's fracturing trust at the moment, I think. You know, the beauty of my job is one day I'm accused of being on the left, the next I'm being accused of being on the right. And I like my audience where I am.
Yeah, which means you probably got it right, Will.
Yeah.
Which means you probably got it right.
With that in mind, though, I mean, just this idea of politicians coming out and, you know, labeling the journalism as mainstream, do you think it's causing more harm than good?
I do, because there's so many untrustworthy sources of information now, and people are going to different platforms to get their information. Disinformation is just rife, and so, you know, we may not always think that our New Zealand media get it right. None of us would think that they always get it right, and they themselves would say that they don't always get it right, but they certainly try to, and they certainly try to be fair in the journalism that they do undertake. And we need there to be trusted sources of information. And I think most level-headed people in New Zealand would agree that Radio New Zealand is.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Now, Luxon, our dear old Prime Minister, oh, he's not old, but, you know, he's over in the UK at the moment with Sir Keir Starmer. Important stuff, grip and grin stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, unlike when we were in government and the opposition were critical of our Prime Minister Jacinda doing what she needed to do overseas. In fact, I think they were calling her the part-time Prime Minister just because she was doing the stuff that she needed to. I don't think that we should be. I mean, he's got to. This is part of the job, and he's got to do that.
Yeah, I'm just throwing another spanner in the works. I had Andrew Little on the show earlier this week. Your former boss. What do you make of him running for Wellington Mayor? Eh?
Well, I think he'd be great. You know, I've worked with Andrew for a long time. He was the leader of our party for a while. I supported him to be leader, and I think he'd make a great mayor of Auckland. I think that he'd be a unifying figure, which I think Wellington. Did I just say mayor of Auckland? I meant mayor of Wellington. Yeah. I mean, if he wanted to come to Auckland, no. But I think he'd be a unifying figure in Wellington, and so I think it'd be good.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of Tory Whānau, though? The thing I like about Tory Whānau is I think she embodies and encapsulates what is Wellington in the sense of, you know, it's unashamedly liberal, it's left. And so not to say that Andrew's not, but, you know, she appeals to perhaps the younger voter.
Yeah, and I think that Tory certainly has her positive characteristics, and she cares deeply about Wellington City as well. And so I don't want to undermine Tory, and I've worked closely with Andrew. He's as a leader, and so, you know, I'm positive about his run.
No, fair enough. Okay, look, Anzac Day, of course, is coming up. We're speaking with the Veterans Minister just after yourself. I mean, what reflecting on Anzac, it is always an important time, isn't it?
It's a very important time, and it's been awesome over the years since I've been attending these events to see the sheer numbers just increase. Apart from during COVID, obviously, for obvious reasons, there's a general sense of respect for this occasion and for what has gone on and the people that have served for our country. I think there's also a heightened sense of concern for what's happening internationally, which will make us reflect in a different way, I think, this year.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more. Do you think, particularly for our young Pasifika, is the significance of Anzac being lost?
Well, I think that it's only been in recent years where many of our community have learnt, or it's been taught, that our Pasifika community were engaged with the World War One and World War Two in any way whatsoever. Prior to that, recent years myself, I didn't realise the level of engagement that our Pacific community had, and so, I don't think we've always taught or known the extent to which it is relevant to our community.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Sorry, I'm just distracted. A text has just come in off the text machine saying Andrew Little for Mayor of Auckland. See what you've started? Thank you very much. That is Carmel Sepuloni, the Labour Deputy Leader. You have a good weekend when you get to it, eh?
Yeah, you too. Thank you.